with this oil painted version of the casting theme. I'm hoping that this is all dry now, and where we painted the figure in basic layers of colour, I have added detail, added light. So I was looking at making the figure slightly warmer in colour than the surrounding. So yellow ochre here and a little darker, and a reddish jacket with red cap, and this sense of light on the upward facing surfaces. Little additions of white at the legs, where I would expect there to be foaming water here, and perhaps around the rocks. So this is the notion of bringing light out of dark in oils, in oil painting. And I've added light on the cascade, so with a small watercolour brush, just adding some streaks of light with white and a little bit of Liquin medium. And in the water, foaming water, just looking at the edge quality of that and seeing if there's anything that can be done with breaking this up with some stippling, additional marks. What sort of qualities are there in foaming water, particularly around the edges of water? Stipple there. And then also in the foreground area of water, where there might be some additional white water foaming on the surface. So I suppose that's a little bit like dry brush in oils. Horizontal flattish movements of the brush. Kind of thing, just to make this look more dramatic. With the sun rays, I was hoping to use a semi-opaque glaze of a mixture of ultramarine pink, crimson and white to make a mauve colour, but this looks strange on the palette. That's mixed in with Liquin, quite fluid. Large hog brush I'm using for this, and I'm going to paint this on here like this. So I think the sun rays have a tone, they have a colour, they're not white, and this is got a bluish mauve tint to it. So that's the first application of the colour, which is quite slippery on this surface. Now I would take a dry, clean, softer brush, so this is a synthetic brush, acrylic brush, and very, very lightly, so I'm holding the brush where it balances, very lightly brush out this glaze of this ephemeral aspect of sunlight radiating downwards about 45 degrees, building up those layers. So the thing to say about the sunlight is that it's not, the distance between the rays is not regular. Come to about there, because this is rather wet here. I can use this soft brush, if I clean it like that, clean it off, to lift out on wet. Or I can go back to a little solvent with the brush and take away a little bit more, but the solvent's not such a great idea because it stops the blurring effect. So it's best if it's a dry brush. disperse those marks a bit more. So this is meant to be mark free, this glaze, i.e. all the marks, any sort of surface quality is brushed away. Quite a few sun rays, as if looking into the light here. Slightly pinkish colour in the glow on the far left. A bit of pinkish light. And just have a go at blurring that. Very light touch with the brush where, when it comes to diffusing this glaze, it would be possible just to brush that away completely. We're looking to build it up gradually. So there is a pool of light on the distant river, which is again this glaze mixture. And although it contains white, the white is diluted quite a bit by the Liquin. So there appears to be light further away. There appears to be a slightly bluer ultramarine colour in the sun rays over on the far right. And this does obscure quite a lot of the trees, but the trees are still there, just more obscured. So very light touch with the brush. I'm trying to keep that from disappearing altogether. So the gaps, I've tried to make the gaps different, they're not the same. Otherwise it's going to look like wallpaper a little bit. A little bit of pale blue in the distance. Smoky effect. So more of a smoky effect on that distant bit of river. And this could be improved on with subsequent layers of glaze, almost indefinitely in the case of oil paint. So I'm hoping that's giving something of the effect of sunlight coming down onto this scene. And if we look at the rocks, the foreground rocks, that glazes could be used there too to work into light areas of light. Something that's missing, something that might be worth considering, are these ferns with a mix of cadmium yellow and white, cerulean blue. A little impression of some of these ferns caught in sunlight. Again, just shaping the brush. I'm going to make up a few ferns. Here's another one. So there are more ferns in shade in this area in the foreground, and that's be with a slightly darker mix of cerulean blue, cadmium yellow and white, a little bit of white. Where they are a bit sort of confused visually, I'll try and simplify that. The great thing about oils, just wipe it off, it doesn't work. Some more. So there are perhaps more ferns could be painted onto this foreground. It's all to do with shaping the brush, the right loading of the brush to make detail come off the edge of a filbert brush. If I zoom out of this, there is a little more perhaps could be done. It's mainly the addition of light and time spent on the figure to create detail there with a small watercolour brush, as the figure is the centre of focus in this image of strong light and contrast and shade.